My name is Wendy Gates, and I'm from here in Fort Worth. I'm a mom and a grandma, and I was a museum volunteer for a very long time, like 4 or 5 days a week. Yeah. When we moved back to Fort Worth in 1993, my husband started volunteering when Jurassic Park exhibit was here. And he said, there's a sign on the wall that said they're taking a few volunteers to the site where they're actually digging a dinosaur. Would you like to go? I can put your name on the list. So I came and I met Jim Diffley, and I got to ride in the van, the museum van, out, and he was wonderful. He described all the formations as we drove from here down through Granbury, and this is White Mountain and Twin Formation, and he explained everything to us and brought us down and introduced us to everybody and showed us the quarry, and it was like a day trip. We all got sandwiches and we drove back to the museum. And then I got word that there was going to be another one, so I got my name on the next list too. And then I, after a couple times of coming down with a group from the museum, I was invited to come spend more than just the afternoon down there. It was like the most wonderful thing that I had been asked to come down. So wonderful. I had never been on a dig or anything like that. I was always interested in archaeology. And I grew up going to every museum that was within distance of our family. So I loved museums. At the time, though, he got to come volunteer because I was being mom. But it changed quickly. I met LaShawn and Jane and everybody and started coming 1 or 2 days a week, and then it got to be almost 5 days a week. So it was fun. We had to live in Tulsa for a few years. I grew up everywhere. I was born in Colorado, moved to Michigan, moved to California. I've spent my youth in South Dakota, lived outside Washington, D.C., went to high school in Rochester, New York, came to TCU, and after graduation, we bought a house in Arlington, and then went to Tulsa for a few years, and then came back. And now I live in North Fort Worth. My degree was in biology and then medical technology. I worked at Harris downtown. Yeah, I was a lab person. Bacteriology. I worked in the lab at Harris. All the plating and blood cultures and all that exciting stuff. Mycology. It was right at the time when AIDS was a big thing, but I got pregnant with my second child, and they said no more. My doctors told me no more. So from 1985 until 2002, I was just a mom. Just a mom. It was the highlight of my life at the time that I had been asked not to just come when Jim would bring a van down, but I was invited to come spend the week down there in camp. It was like a dream come true. Yeah, no, that was fun. I had all the equipment. I had all the stuff. Yes, and the camping and after the dig, they'd be talking about things that we'd found, and then there'd be a bonfire, and everyone's sitting around. It was the community of, you had the scientists, and you had the grad students working on their projects, and you had a couple volunteers, and it was just everybody just, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. I learned so much. Scary. I was afraid I would ruin something or break something, but Dale and Jim were very careful about making sure that newbies were not put in an area where something they didn't already know what was there. I think the first few times I was given a hammer and a chisel to work on a big block of stone, and it was hard work. So you knew this, it was hot, it was hard work, it was dirty, it was noisy, but I wasn't going to damage anything. And they were very careful. They were very, very patient, and probably Jim from being in the museum, having to work with all kinds of people, and be like, well, this is how you do it. These are the tools you should use for this particular thing, and this is how you should do it. And if you think you found something, just stop and tell us, and we'll come see. So they were, there was a watchful eye, but being the quarry, someone would be working over here, there'd be 2 or 3 people over here. So no one was just standing over you, breathing down, it's like, okay, we'd like you to see what's here. We think there might be something. So I was taught how to use the picks and how to take little layers off, and that you don't scoop things out. And, this is the proper way to do it. And I know there were a couple times I just got too excited, because the first time that you see that chocolate bone, I'm the first human being to ever see this. That is the feeling that it still gets me excited to think about that. And then you have to stop and go, whoa, 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 I'm not supposed to completely uncover it. I'm supposed to tell somebody that it's here. And then you have to put the glue on it, or make a jacket or something like that. But they were so good. They taught me how to do it. And, you just do to be careful. And anytime something was discovered anywhere in the quarry, everybody would go over to see what it was. So it was so exciting. It's just exciting for a mom, with the routine and everything, to be in this whole different environment, doing something so cool as dinosaurs. It was just fascinating. I loved it. The crew that I think of as the Dinosaur, the Jones Ranch people, Jim Diffley, Dale Winkler and his wife, Elise, and their boys, and Alice, of course, the Jones, Bill in DC, Kent Newman would come down all the time. And then we had some other museum volunteers. I think Arlene was from Dallas Paleo Society. Bill Lowe was in the Dallas Paleo Society. But that was the group that at the end of the day, we'd be the ones that would go camp. And then over the years, it became Dale and his wife, Jim Diffley, Alice, and myself. And then Bill Lowe for a few years, but he was having problems. Mm-hmm. And so he had to drop off. But for years, that was our core group. Dale and Jim had all the knowledge, and they would share all of that. You could ask them anything, and Jim would tell you what every piece of grass was. You'd say, "Oh, I have something stuck in my boot. Oh, that's a Nakaholia bucatuca or whatever." And he goes, "That only grows in certain places." And he'd say, "Did you see that blue grass over there?" And Dale's wife knows every bird, and their son was a photographer. And it's just this community of knowledgeable friendly people, everybody sharing. Alice and I just ate it all up. It was, I won't say we didn't contribute anything. The tradition was that only Dale and Jim were allowed to cook. The first time I tried to help, like, oh, I did put that onion. I was like, I was pulled aside and told, don't go over there. That's their kitchen. And the picnic tables. And then I was asked to help cook. And then as we went on year after year, every spring and every fall, Alice and I were in charge of breakfast. And that was a big deal. That you have a role. This is what you do. And, we all just had so much fun together. They were all such genuinely kind, just smart people that you couldn't help but learn. I mean, it wasn't even dinosaurs. Jim telling about the grass or something like that, and learning about the birds and why that bird was in that bush. Or it was wonderful. Yes, some of my happiest times were down at Jones Ranch. And Mr. Jones at DC would come down. They'd always come down for dinner, and everyone would get up and shuffle the chairs around the fire so Mr. Jones could be near the fire to stay warm. There were usually dogs around. It was just so much fun. It was so much fun. When it was hot, we could pile into the different vehicles and go down to the spot where when the water would flood, it would go over the road right there on Baker's Crossing Road. And they'd just park the cars off the side and we'd just splash in the water. It was kind of like the only bathing you got the week we're down here. It's just like, yes, please, let me go in there. One of the highlights was when they built the outhouse, because otherwise it was like, okay, I'm going to take a walk, so nobody else would go that direction. But when we got an outhouse, that was high class. And then it floated away in a flood. And one of the neighbors found it and said, hey, I think your outhouse is on our ranch. And it got hauled back, but, the moon was crooked in there. So it's because Dale and Jim were looking out for us. They wanted to make it nice for everybody. They were they're both still very kind people. It was, I mean, I don't know how you would ever put that kind of group of people together. You had just the wisdom, Mr. Jones telling his stories about flying the airplanes, and Jim and his travels and his orchids, that he judges orchids, and Dale talking about digging dinosaurs in Africa. I mean, fascinating. It's fascinating. Yes, my husband went one time, and when I stayed home with the kids, and then my kids went out with me a time or two, and once again, Dale and Jim, took them. This is this. Would you like to come? You can dig over here in this part of the quarry, and here's some tools for you to have, and just looking out for everybody, making sure everyone knew what was going on, helping them understand. This is what we found. This is how we found it. There's four different bodies here and these giant logs, and we think it came down this way. And, for a little kid, I think my son was probably 7 or 8. It was just, this is like real dinosaurs. This is the real thing. So they talk about it. They talk about going down to Jones Ranch. DC and Bill knew my kids, and always, over the years, have always asked about him, and everyone knows. All my family knows. If I mention DC, everyone knows who that is, or Diffley. They all know, because that was such a big part of my life. Exactly. We had loan kits. I don't know if we still have loan kits, but my kids were in elementary and middle school at the time that we started, and the Loan Kit program was going. I gave more dinosaur talks at the different schools, and for not just my kids' classes, for other kids. I was known as the Dino Lady at this elementary school for sure. And my middle school son's friends are like, hey, Dino Mom, who are you, Dino Mom? They thought I was just, it makes you feel good when your kids think you're cool. That was pretty cool. Now, I don't know many of the teachers over there anymore, but I'm sure there's something I could take from the museum to help teach kids. But I have dinosaurs on my shelves in my living room. And I wear my dinosaur hats. And I just went to the Museum of the Rockies and got to see their dinosaurs up there. Anywhere there's dinosaurs. It is. It's fascinating. And they keep finding them. And people say, oh, yeah, I know someone. They've got dinosaurs on the ranch, but they aren't telling anybody. Because, then people go crazy. And it's like, that's like me. Yeah, learn from this. Look what was here. Learn from real Texas history. This happened where you live. Because we've, in the area, they have found mastodons and things like that. Isn't it mastodons? Or is that the right term? But this is so much more. And people generally know about Dinosaur Valley, but that's just footprints as far as they're concerned. This was like, here, this was the real thing. And to have the Jones, constantly have us down there, just, they were so into it. I don't know that I would call DC like a dinosaur person, but the idea that people were down there and their property was helping people learn, that meant so much to them. Mr. Jones was so proud to bring them down. You have somebody will call us and tell us and bring them down here, and we'll let them come down and go through, because everyone should know about this. They were wonderful people, and the fact that they invited us down and had people all those years was too kind. It was exciting that there was something new, because otherwise you'd hear about a new dinosaur in Argentina or something like that. That was a new thing. And it's like, this is not just another dinosaur. These are special dinosaurs. There's something different about this dinosaur that maybe our dinosaur is the one that made the footprints, because you could tell the story, but they don't really know who made those footprints. But this dinosaur could have made those footprints. And then them talking about naming it after Mr. Jones, that just was wonderful. We all thought, just the hearing Dale, I never understood all of the minutia and all the terminology. That wasn't what I had studied. But, when they would talk about it back at camp and stuff about why this one was different, and the little nook on this, or the knob on this bone, or something was different than something else. It's like, okay, we have a new thing here. This is so exciting, and they're going to get to name this. That was wonderful. It was upsetting when they came back and said, oh, no. We were all kind of like, no, that's not right. So I hear right now that it's kind of on the fence. They're going back and forth about, is this new, or which name do we have to use? But to me, it will always be Paleontological Jones. Yes, I'm very proud to tell people that I got to help with that. It was exhausting. trying to, keep up your energy and keep up your spirits, because there would be, I could be here for a whole week and never really find something. You'd see other people finding things, and you'd just be in that mud and with your trowel, and you'd think you'd found something, and Dale would go, "It's really nice, but it's really just charcoal," or it could be discouraging, but it was hot in the summer. Even when we go in March, it was very hot, and you would be exhausted, and you just thought, "I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. I'm just too hot." And then someone would find something and go, "I can try a little bit longer. I can go a little bit longer." Being tired, being sore from digging, or they didn't usually make us do like the wheelbarrows, because all that dirt had to go somewhere. But everyone would try to pitch in and do do your part, pick up all the tools or haul something or whatever. It was a team effort, but it was probably the hardest part was just wanting so much to find something important and new and exciting. And then, you found a really nice piece of charcoal, or, "Oh, yeah, well, that's very nice, but we have one of those." Other people had more experience and knew different ways to do things, and they would find really cool pieces. But seeing them, nobody ever said, "Well, I found it, you can't go." Everybody would come around and they'd explain it, and Dale would take pictures and say, "This would be this, and it goes right here." And probably just, not being good enough to really find the big stuff, the fancy stuff. But every part was important. Even the metapodial was important. So
Can you tell us about?
finding that, it was my lucky day. I just had my little trowel, and I saw that chocolate brown bone, and I showed Dale, and it's like, "Well, work on it a little bit more." So we brushed a little bit and picked a little bit, and until we had gotten it to where we could put a jacket on it. But it's a nice piece of the foot that it's important to put it all together. It was so exciting that I found that. Yes. So exciting. I'm nobody. I'm just a mom. I'm just a volunteer. I'm nothing but that. I had been part of the team for all those years that I got to be listed under the volunteers. That meant the world to me, that I was important somehow. It really made me feel good. Well, I know that now, but I got to, I was invited to come be part of this, and I was brought in and got to be part of this wonderful team of people. And I learned so much. I've met people, and I got to be a cool mom. So that was wonderful. I would want to do this again. I'm hoping that someone else will come up and say, "You know what, we really need some volunteers," and I will be the first in line. We did camp in a number of three different places that I can think of. But our main camp was the pecan forest, down along the river, past the ranch house. We'd have to drive through cows, but it was quiet, and you could hear the water running. We had like a covered, tented area. The first day out, everyone would get together, and it would take everybody to put the poles in and put a canopy, so we'd have a place to be under. And then the kitchen was the little Coleman stove, And we always had to go collect the fallen branches for our bonfire because you had to have a bonfire every night, even in the summertime. Everybody brought their thing. There were all the different kinds of lawn chairs. Everyone pitched. Dale's tent always had to go to this spot. Jim always put his truck and his little camper over here, or his tent. At the beginning was a tent. You know, Alice and I would put our tents this way because it was closer to the outhouse. But everyone pitched in. Everyone contributed. Everybody brought things for the kitchen. And we would always have a wonderful meal together, discuss the day, stories. There were so many stories that could never be repeated. There perhaps was a lot of alcohol. After a hard day's work, had to, help with the soreness or something. Just jokes, laughter, stars. Of course, Jim and Dale knew everything about that also. They could point out everything, tell you which direction to look, and you'd hear sounds. And they would say, well, that is a barn owl. And, oh, no, that one was a whippoorwill. And this was we had wild boars or wild hogs that would come through camp. And the cows would come walk through the camp. It was a wonderful little village of craziness, happiness, jokes, noise, lots of stories, many stories. It made all of the stress or the worries or just the exhaustion of the day. You knew when you got together around that campfire, you were with good friends and good people. And they're still my friends. There was a thing with a tent. One of the people, Stephen, from New York City, came. He was a great explorer and everything, but he didn't have gear because he'd flown in. He was put in a tent that kind of sagged. We had a rain, so it filled with water, and everything started floating. It's like open the tent and water. There were maybe some dares that were given about getting close to the fire. There were many boots that melted in the fire. There were some things. People, would play tricks if you'd run down and they'd bang on the tree when you thought you had found a private place. And there was some silly stuff. Sometimes people would, people would go off to their tents and things would get quiet and someone would start tapping on a tent or, trying to scare people. There were some other things that just, they happened. It's what happened doesn't have to always be shared. The teachers had their own week. And when the teachers were there, the rest of us weren't there. Dale and Jim would be there, but Alice, the volunteer team, I think Bill Lowe probably went too because he was kind of an expert. But the volunteer group that I've been talking about, that we didn't go when the teachers were there. They had their hands full just trying to keep all the teachers in tents and fed and everything else. So we didn't go then. We heard about it. We heard about, different, I don't think she was a teacher, the bee in the Coke can. You always had to be careful because there were bees all the time. And if you put your Coke can down, they'd go in the Coke can, and somebody ran into a bee one time. But we heard stories about the teachers, but I never went while the teachers were there. And they had to go in the middle of summer. We didn't. I think that I know that in my family, people that had never gone to a museum, not my family, but new people move into the neighborhood or my son got married into a family that had never been to a museum. And it's like, you need to go. Well, first of all, Mom's Dinosaur is there. And I'm telling my neighbors, they've learned about museum school. They've learned about the museum. Then they've come down here and learned about the whole cultural district, all because I talked about the dinosaur. That brought people just a new thing in their life, something they hadn't experienced. They've learned as that was the seed. I think people nowadays understand dinosaurs more than when this all started, and not just Jurassic Park, which isn't, that's Jurassic Park. I think people talk about it. People understand and they ask questions and they understand the difference between sauropods and theropods and everything else. And I think having display like this, it's helped people expand their knowledge. Dinosaurs aren't just a long-necked brontosaurus or something. There's more dinosaurs than T-Rex and brontosaurus. I think it's valuable. I think people need to know this is something that was real. It was here, and it's part of our history. And, you learn from this, and then you reach out and you learn a little bit more because of that. I have so many friends that knew nothing about it and didn't care about it that do now. They've taken their families to Dinosaur Valley. They've come to the museum, all because I got to volunteer and go do that. So I think it's wonderful. It brought so many people together and taught them things that they probably never would have known. Just ask questions and try to get your foot in the door. Ask a question next time you're visiting a museum and say, do you have a program where volunteers can help? Not just volunteering at the museum, and then this opportunity came up. Don't be afraid to ask, because there's so many things going on right now. There are excavations all over the place. I just read in a magazine this week that different ways that you can go about signing on to volunteer at excavations all across the country, in South Dakota, in Montana, and Wyoming. They have programs where if that's something you're interested in, depending on what level you want to be involved, you can do it. But don't be afraid to ask. Just if there isn't one, could you keep my name in case something comes up? And you don't have to. I have the science background, and so I understood some of the terminology and things like that. But Alice was a Paleo Society of Dallas person, and mostly what she knew was how to dig. She knew how to find things. But I don't, I don't think she had any science background. But definitely vital played a big role in what we did in helping, and just, even knowing how to use a microscope to look at when we collect buckets of stuff to wash and look. Just don't be afraid. Just ask, because there might be something out there, and that's the way to start. Let people know you're interested. It was because mostly when I first started, those huge 10-ton blocks that had been, encased to bring back on huge semi-trucks. It's like, oh, a dinosaur is big. But it's the tiny little things that help tell the story. Other things, the plant material and the trees that were there and everything to help put the whole story together. It wasn't just a dinosaur lay down in the dirt and just died. They put it all together because of finding the other materials. They know what the forest was like. They know that our dinosaurs weren't right at the water's edge of the inland sea, that they were more in the little foresty area because of the plant material. And finding those little things helped the story. We never did, as far as I know, actually find mammals. I don't think we ever found anything that was mammal, and I know they were looking. At the very end, we found the crocodilian type things, the little scoots and things like that. And so it was like, oh, now there's another thing. No, we're done. But putting it all, dinosaurs didn't just tromp through. There was life all around them, and finding those other pieces, it helps tell a story. You have to have the story. So that's why it's so important to have people like Dale who know, and he put all the pictures and where this was found, and that's how you know what happened, or can have an educated guess about what happened, because you do that. It's frustrating when people say, oh, I found this thing, and it's not on this particular site, but I dug something, I pulled it out. It's like, well, did you take a picture? Do you know where you found it? Can you tell it? Because now it's just something you found, and you've taken it out of telling the story of where it was found and why it was there. So I liked learning that and understanding how important it was to use all the pieces together to tell the story. Absolutely. I'd give him a big hug and then I'd go. Yes, I would. I've actually, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do it, but I've tried to sign up to dig at Vindolanda, the Roman site in northern England too, just because just love lying in the wet muck. No, if Dale had something else, I would be out the door right now. Yes. Absolutely. It's too exciting. Nobody had seen those things. No human being had ever seen those things. My favorite memory. It would be between being asked to come out because it meant I did okay, and having Dale tell me that that I had found that beautiful. He said, this is a really nice bone. This is a really nice piece. You did a good job. That made me feel great. But the people made it the experience that it was. The dinosaurs were fascinating. The people made it the best. I told the kids the most important thing I wanted to say was how exciting it was to see that chocolate brown and know that nobody else had ever seen that before. I mean, the idea of that, and it wasn't like, oh, it's been here for 100 years. Think how long that's been there, and nobody has ever seen this, and I found it. That is the coolest feeling. I don't know what else to say. It's got a date in the picture book. It was closer to the end because it was near the back, not really the back of the quarry, but not at the very beginning part. It was years into, a couple years in. Yeah, it wasn't something I found at the beginning. I was still put on the rock and chisel duty at the beginning. Well, because the quarry would change from the time you cover everything up and leave for spring. We're done because he's teaching and this person's going, we're not going to be back here for months. And then when you'd come back, it would have rained and the cows would have walked through and everything else. And so every time you went to open up again, you never knew what you were going to find. Things had been washed down from the back of the quarry in different sections. You're like, oh, this wall fell down. So let's see what's here now. Something might have been uncovered. And you always had to be careful because there was usually, oh, watch out. If you look, and you could see there was plastic. Someone had covered something up and then the sand had washed over it. Don't walk over there. That might be. So it was spread out through the quarry. You did have to be careful, but it was exciting. After the pieces were put here in the museum and we would go back down and just poke around, there would be teeth and little bits and things that it had just washed out of the wall. So it was always exciting. Like, I know we can't dig, but can we just walk around? So things, little bits and pieces were found and stuff. But it was just an experience that, changed my life and made me the cool mom. And, I loved it. I just loved it. And I thank the museum for having a program that allowed volunteers to participate because I think there are a lot of places that, only the scientists can do these things. And you can watch us through a window, which is still cool because there's things that you really have to know what you're doing when you use the little micro tools and things. But it's nice to have a museum that said, yeah, come on, let's do what we can do here. It was cool. I appreciated that.